My own brother, in front of 50 people, shoved me out of my wheelchair and demanded I stop faking. Unaware that standing directly behind him was my surgeon, who was recording every word. The 5 words he spoke next shattered my entire family's life. It happened in mid-July at my Aunt Brenda's annual family gathering, in the backyard where it always smelled like grilling meat and fresh-cut grass. I'm 35 years old, and for over 2 years now, I've been living in a reality I didn't ask for. I mean a reality where my spine is held together by 4 metal rods, where my right leg can't tell where it is in space, and where I spend 12 hours a day in a wheelchair. The stairwell accident, that's all you need to know, just a bad fall that changed everything, but apparently gave my family the right to a public trial. I'd begged my mom, Carol, to let me skip it. I tried to cancel the invitation 3 times because I could feel the atmosphere thickening, but Aunt Brenda insisted, saying I was part of the family and needed to get out of the house. So I went. I was sitting, leaning against the patio wall under the blistering sun, trying to breathe through the pain spikes that have become my constant, unwelcome guests. My chair was parked a little way off because, you see, it was blocking the pathway. According to my Uncle George, who sells insurance and constantly talks about personal responsibility while nursing his Bud Light. The tension had been building for months, but in the last 4 weeks, it became unbearable, hard and palpable, like a bad smell. Ever since I had to go back into the hospital because of nerve complications, my brother, Dustin, started acting like an aggrieved prosecutor convinced of my guilt. He's 38, muscular, a heavy drinker, and frankly, he stopped hiding his contempt a long time ago. He convinced himself, and worse, he convinced most of the family, that I was faking. That the $837 monthly disability checks, plus everything Carol was covering, was my comfortable kingdom built on a lie. 2 weeks before this gathering, Dustin openly wrote in the family group chat that it was time to put an end to this circus, and that I needed to stand up and work, like everyone else. No one stopped him. No one asked how I was. They either kept silent or, worse, nodded in agreement. I knew this would end badly, but I didn't realize how quickly and how publicly. I watched Dustin drain one beer after another. His face got redder, and his righteous anger grew louder. He approached just as I was trying to maneuver myself into my chair. I was halfway there, leaning on a patio chair for support, when he loomed directly over me. I could smell the beer, the barbecue sauce, and something else, something vicious coming off him. "Still putting on the show, Ethan?" he said, loud enough for 20 people to hear. "Aren't you tired of it? 2 years. 2 years you've been bleeding Mom dry, living in her basement, and ordering food on her credit card. Time to quit." He didn't give me a chance to answer. He didn't let me explain that the new medical equipment Carol bought cost so much she had to take out a second mortgage on the house she'd lived in for 30 years, and that I hadn't asked her to, but she didn't know how else to help. He simply grabbed my wheelchair, which was nearby, and violently shoved it away. The aluminum frame clattered and fell on its side, the wheel slowing to a stop. Then, with equal force, he hit my shoulder. I didn't have time to brace myself. The concrete met my palms first, then my shoulder, then my head. Not hard enough to black out, but enough for the world to tilt and stay there. The hot, sun-drenched backyard began to spin, like I was drunk. I lay there on the baked concrete, my chair, my only means of mobility, discarded a yard away. My right leg was twisted at an angle that sent a jolt of pain up my spine, the kind I'd learned to endure over the past 26 months. It was the kind of pain that narrowed my vision at the edges. Dustin stood over me, his chest heaving, his face contorted by triumph and 3 beers. "Stop faking for attention, Ethan," he shouted for everyone to hear. "Time to drop the charade. Everyone's watching. Come on. Get up and show us you can walk, just like Kevin saw you in the grocery store." My cousin Kevin, who still lived with his parents and worked at Best Buy, stepped forward and nodded. I saw him. He was walking in the cereal aisle. I swear. The crowd murmured, nodding along. My mom stood near the snack table, wringing her hands, but she didn't move forward. She'd been broken over the last 2 years, and I could see it. Uncle George pulled out his phone and started filming, announcing it was evidence that should have been gathered ages ago. I tried to push myself up, but my arms shook, and the scrapes on my palms from the concrete immediately welled up with blood. That was physical therapy? I gasped, my voice barely a whisper. The outpatient program. Sure. Dustin interrupted, his voice dripping with scorn. He kicked my wheelchair again, and it rang mournfully. You're just collecting disability checks while the rest of us work. You're living off Mom while she bankrupts herself trying to fix you. I could taste blood in my mouth where I'd bitten my tongue. The pain wasn't just from the fall. It was from the betrayal. I looked at Dustin's face, so close I felt his breath. Then I looked at the 50 people standing around, watching like it was a cheap reality show. Aunt Brenda, who invited me, stood with her arms crossed, her lips pursed in judgment. My grandmother, under the oak tree, was fanning herself with a paper plate. No one moved. No one called for help. They just watched, waiting for me to finally give up and stand. Then they started chanting, quietly at first, then louder, picking up a rhythm. Stand up, stand up, stand up. 50 voices, some belonging to kids. Aunt Brenda even started clapping in time, like a cheerleader. Dustin grabbed my shirt and hauled me halfway up. I couldn't move my leg. The pain was intensifying, meaning I'd torn or displaced something. I was looking at weeks and thousands of dollars to fix the physical damage, not to mention the humiliation. I'm not kidding, Ethan, he hissed in my face. Get up right now or I'm calling the cops for fraud. Disability fraud, insurance fraud, whatever fits. You'll go to jail, and honestly, it might be better for everyone. I just lay there, unable even to whisper. It was at that exact moment, when my dignity was 0 and the pain was at 9, that everything abruptly stopped. Dustin's grip on my shirt loosened slightly. The chanting ceased. Someone cleared their throat. I heard a voice. Calm, authoritative, with a slight Asian accent. That's my patient you're assaulting. Dustin dropped me, and I hit the concrete again. A man stepped forward from the crowd. Mid-50s, wire-rimmed glasses, navy polo shirt and khakis, holding a can of Diet Coke. He looked like he'd been standing there the whole time, enjoying the show. Dustin, completely blindsided, demanded, "Who the hell are you?" The man took a sip of his soda, looked at me, then at Dustin. "Dr. Alistair Kim," he said. "I am his orthopedic surgeon." The world went silent after he said those 5 words. But the worst part was watching my mother's face when she realized the secret I had been protecting her from for 2 years was about to become public knowledge. Dustin's hands were still raised, frozen halfway between letting me go and striking me again. The beer, the anger, the triumph. It all drained from his face, replaced by a cold, calculating fear. 50 people, who seconds earlier had been chanting and laughing, stood absolutely motionless, caught between the smell of sizzling burgers and the realization that the spectacle had gone from family drama to an actual crime scene. You could hear the country music still faintly playing from someone's speaker, a low, stupid drone in the sudden silence. Dr. Kim, Alistair, stood there with a perfect clinical calm. He didn't rush, didn't raise his voice, and didn't make a grand gesture. He simply finished chewing his ice and lowered the can of Diet Coke. "Let me reiterate," he said, directing his gaze at Dustin, but loud enough for the entire assembly, including Uncle George's still recording phone, to hear. "Ethan is currently recovering from spinal fusion surgery, which I performed 14 months ago. He is disabled. His ability to walk is limited to short distances with assistance during physical therapy. What you just did constitutes assault of a disabled person. What your family just did constitutes public humiliation and harassment." His words were like physical blows. My Aunt Brenda, the one who'd led the chanting, took a sharp step back, bringing her hand up to her mouth. Cousin Kevin, the one who claimed he saw me walking in the grocery store aisle, silently turned and scurried toward the house, disappearing into the kitchen door. The family was fracturing already, not out of remorse, but out of fear of consequences. Lying there on the concrete, the pain in my twisted right leg intensifying, I looked up at my brother. We shared a bedroom for 15 years. He taught me how to change the oil in my first car. He was my best man at my short-lived wedding before the accident. Now he was just a stranger with a red, hostile face. What hurt wasn't the physical blow. It was his absolute conviction that I was a liar, a parasite he needed to expose. It was the resentment that had been festering, not because of what happened to me, but because of what my accident did to him. It made him lose the title of the only successful son. The biggest tragedy, the one I hadn't let anyone know about, wasn't the paralysis itself, but the massive financial hole it had ripped in our family. Dustin kept harping on the $837 check and the DoorDash orders, but that was noise. The real issue was the modified Honda Odyssey van with the wheelchair ramp, the one Carol had mortgaged the house for. I hadn't known about the second mortgage until that very week, when I accidentally saw an envelope with bank letterhead open on the kitchen counter. I didn't want to confront her. I wanted to handle it myself. I had already begun consulting with a lawyer, Cassandra Reyes, referred by Alistair, about a lawsuit against the building owner where I fell. My goal, the secret I was desperately trying to keep until I could fix it, was to secure enough money to pay off Mom's debt and then leave. I knew my presence was destroying her financially, and it was that knowledge, that specific guilt, that made my current predicament unbearable. I saw my mom, Carol, finally move. She approached Alistair, ignoring me, her face pale. "Dr. Kim, I didn't know you were here," she whispered. Her voice was weak, the voice of someone who had been fighting a losing battle for too long. "He has physical therapy, but he never said." "He asked me to come, Carol," Alistair cut in softly, his eyes never leaving Dustin. He suspected this confrontation was inevitable. He's been dealing with the whispers and accusations for months. He needed a witness, someone with indisputable proof. Dustin's voice, though lower now, still held venom. "Proof? He can stand up in the grocery store, and you call this indisputable? He's been collecting a paycheck for 2 years of lying, and Mom is a broken woman because of it." Alistair looked calmly at the entire assembly, including my Uncle George, who was sweating but still recording. "The reason Ethan can briefly stand in a grocery store, as your cousin observed, is because his physical therapy goal is to achieve minimal mobility with a walker for 5 minutes, specifically 47 meters, to retain muscle tone and bone density," he explained, his tone utterly devoid of emotion. "When those 5 minutes are up, the nerve damage causes neuropathic pain. Imagine nails being driven into your leg while simultaneously being shocked by a cattle prod. That is his daily reality." He paused for effect, letting that clinical horror sink in. Then he took out his iPhone. "And I have something everyone here should see, particularly those who questioned his condition and those who just filmed him being assaulted." He held the phone up, and the screen lit up with a crisp, detailed image of my lower back, an X-ray. "This is Ethan's L4 and L5 vertebrae. Note the 4 titanium rods and 14 screws. This is a spinal fusion surgery performed by me. The nerve damage is permanent. The wheelchair is not a choice. It is a medical necessity. And the financial burden you are also concerned about? It's real. And it is about to get much, much heavier because your actions just now caused additional documented injury." He didn't reveal the details of the second mortgage, didn't mention my private plans for the lawsuit, and didn't specify the injury yet. But the threat hung in the hot July air. I wasn't the problem. My family's ignorance was about to become the consequence. And as Alistair gently knelt beside me to examine my twisted leg, I felt a strange mix of relief and terror. The lie was exposed, but the truth was going to explode in our faces within the next 30 days. When Dr. Kim zoomed in on the X-ray of my spine and then showed them the video of the assault, my brother tried to grab the phone, but the real explosion came from my Uncle George, whose face went gray when he realized his own evidence was now the prosecution's key exhibit. Dr. Kim's composure was surgical. He hadn't just explained my injuries. He had provided visual, scientific proof that shattered the entire family narrative built on doubt and resentment. He swiped past the X-ray of the metal hardware in my spine to a high-resolution MRI of my sciatic nerve, pointing to a dark, damaged area. This permanent nerve damage is why he experiences the level of pain he does. It's why his leg gives out without warning. And it's why every single one of you who participated in that vile chant for him to stand up was actively mocking a chronic, debilitating injury. The reaction wasn't immediate contrition. It was raw, panicked self-preservation. Dustin, realizing the gravity of the medical evidence, lunged. "Give me that phone, Kim. You can't record private events." Alistair didn't even flinch. He just held the phone higher, pivoting slightly so that his body shielded me. "This is not a private event, Dustin. It is the assault and public humiliation of a disabled veteran. Yes, Ethan served 4 years in the National Guard by his own family. And you are correct. I have a full recording." He pressed play on his iPhone, and the soundtrack of our family reunion turned horrifyingly real. Dustin's voice boomed from the tiny speaker. "Stop faking for attention." Then the thud of my body hitting the concrete, the nervous laughter, and finally, the 50 voices rising together. "Stand up! Stand up! Stand up!" Alistair let it play for 30 agonizing seconds, capturing the cruelty and the collective malice. When he stopped it, the air was toxic. The burgers were beginning to burn on the grill, filling the yard with a sharp, acrid smell no one noticed. My Uncle George, who was still holding his Samsung Galaxy up, his hand now shaking uncontrollably, finally found his voice. I was gathering evidence." He stammered, addressing the doctor with a sudden, desperate respect. "We all thought. The evidence seemed to support." Alistair looked at George, and his eyes, though calm, were colder than the titanium in my back. "You thought wrong, George. And congratulations. Your video, which I assume you also captured, will be entered as evidence of conspiracy to intimidate a disabled person and group harassment. Thank you for your contribution to the police report and the civil lawsuit I will be filing tomorrow." George's face drained of all color, the self-assured insurance salesman collapsing into a terrified witness. That was the moment the tension reached its breaking point. They hadn't just humiliated me. They had inadvertently committed multiple crimes on camera, and one of the best orthopedic surgeons in the state was their primary witness. Alistair then turned his attention to my leg. He performed a swift, professional assessment right there on the concrete, gently probing the twisted knee and ankle. My pain, which I rated at a hard 9, made me bite back a scream. "Possible lateral collateral ligament damage," he announced, his clinical voice carrying authority. "We need immediate imaging. This fall, caused by your brother's assault, has resulted in a new, serious injury. That means another surgery, another 6 weeks of recovery, and thousands of dollars in medical bills." He looked directly at Dustin. "Every cent of those bills, along with the cost to replace Ethan's orthotic brace, which is now damaged, and the bent frame of his specialized wheelchair, will be added to the civil suit. We will add it all up." Dustin stumbled back, hitting the picnic table. "I was just trying to help Mom. I was trying to save her from the financial drain." He pleaded, his voice cracking. "You didn't ask questions," Alistair stated, standing up and towering over him. "You didn't ask for medical records. You didn't consult his doctor. You just assumed he was lying because it was easier than accepting that life can be random and cruel. You didn't save your mother from anything. You just cost her and yourself significantly more." My mom, Carol, who had finally sprung into action and righted my wheelchair, was sobbing silently as she wheeled it over. The tears streamed down her face, but she made no sound. Her tears weren't just for my new injury. They were for the revelation of the second mortgage and the public destruction of her sons. Alistair helped me into the chair with practiced, gentle care. I whispered to him, "I told you I didn't want the family to know about Mom's mortgage. You don't need to worry about the mortgage anymore, Ethan," he murmured back, low enough only for me to hear. "They've just volunteered to pay it off for her." He stood up and gripped the handles of my chair. "We are leaving now. Ethan has an appointment at the emergency room." He addressed the frozen family one last time, his voice sharp and penetrating. "You should all expect a call from Detective Luis Gonzalez from the Northbrook Police Department within 48 hours. Every person who participated in that chant is on video, every person who laughed, and every person who stood by while a disabled man was assaulted and humiliated by his own brother. The image of 50 people, my family, the people who were supposed to love me, standing in stunned silence, their faces shifting from righteous anger to pure, cold dread, will be etched in my mind forever. It had taken less than 30 minutes, 1 month of festering resentment, and one violent shove to turn a family barbecue into a federal case. My brother called me from jail less than 48 hours after the reunion, but the real moral dilemma wasn't whether to forgive him. It was whether to sue the other 49 family members who stood by and watched, a choice that forced me to decide if I wanted justice or if I wanted any family left at all. The next few days blurred into a brutal sequence of hospital lights and legal paperwork, all happening within that suffocating 1-month timeline. Dr. Kim drove me directly to Northwestern Memorial. The X-rays confirmed the torn lateral collateral ligament in my right knee. Another surgery scheduled for Wednesday, another 6 weeks lost in the agonizing marathon of recovery. The medical staff documented everything, the assault, the pain level, and the pre-existing conditions, creating an ironclad file for the upcoming case. On Monday morning, Alistair, fulfilling his promise, filed a police report for aggravated battery against a disabled person, a Class 2 felony in our state. Detective Luis Gonzalez called me Tuesday afternoon. He was calm, professional, 20 years on the force. "Mr. Thompson, I've reviewed the video evidence from Dr. Kim and your uncle's phone, along with the medical statements. This is clear-cut. Your brother, Dustin, will be arrested on a warrant this evening. The state's attorney will press charges, regardless of your personal wishes." "I don't know what I want," I admitted, staring at the ceiling of my bedroom, the one in Mom's basement, the one Dustin hated. "He's still my brother." The detective didn't mince words. "Families like yours, Mr. Thompson, don't change unless there are consequences, real legal consequences. He assaulted you because he believed he was above the law, protected by family silence. That silence is over." Dustin was arrested Wednesday morning and posted bail by Wednesday afternoon. His lawyer, some guy from his gym who usually handled personal injury cases, called me Thursday. He started the conversation with a weak, "My client wants to apologize. He wants to make this right. If you just tell the prosecutor it was a misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding." I cut him off, my voice flat. "It was assault, recorded by multiple cameras, witnessed by 50 people. There is no ambiguity here. Tell your client that his apology is noted, but the state is pressing charges, not me. He needs to talk to the state's attorney, not me." I hung up before he could respond. The conversation had lasted less than 90 seconds. I felt nothing but a quiet, crushing exhaustion. The civil suit was filed Friday. I met with Cassandra Reyes, the lawyer Dr. Kim referred me to, in her downtown office with a panoramic view of the Chicago River. She was a woman in her mid-50s, with sharp eyes and 20 years specializing in disability rights litigation. We were suing Dustin for battery and intentional infliction of emotional distress, requesting the exact amount needed to cover all medical bills, the replacement of the damaged equipment, and a punitive damages figure that would effectively mean he'd be paying for the rest of his life. But then came the turning point, the real dilemma that made my stomach clench. "We need to talk about the larger case," Cassandra said, leaning forward. "Your Uncle George, Aunt Brenda, the cousin Kevin, and everyone else who participated in that chant. They created a hostile environment. They conspired to harass and intimidate you. That is actionable under disability rights law, separate from the assault charge against Dustin." I stared at her, the panoramic view of the city suddenly irrelevant. "You want me to sue my entire family? 49 people?" "I want you to send a message," she corrected, her voice firm. "I've handled hundreds of these cases. Disabled people get abused by family members who think they are faking it more often than you would believe. They stay quiet because they're isolated, financially dependent, and terrified of losing their support system. But you, Ethan, you have irrefutable medical documentation, you have your surgeon's testimony, and you have video evidence. You have the power to change the narrative not just for yourself but for others." "I just wanted them to believe me," I whispered, the exhaustion hitting me harder than the fall. I just wanted them to believe I was actually hurt. They believe you now, Cassandra said, her sharp smile unwavering. Now we make sure they never forget the consequences of their disbelief. Think about your mother's second mortgage, Ethan. Think about the life of financial anxiety your disability placed on her. They caused this injury. They should pay for the stability they destroyed. She was offering me absolute justice, the chance to financially stabilize my mother and myself, and to hold every single person who stood by accountable. But the price was permanent, irreconcilable fracture. If I sued all 49 people, I would be cutting ties with every branch of my family tree, saving my financial future at the expense of my entire lineage. Dustin's arrest was bad. This was total annihilation. I knew what I had to do, but the moral weight of signing off on the destruction of my family was crushing. I spent the weekend sitting in silence, going over the numbers and the faces of the people chanting. Aunt Brenda's face, Uncle George's sweating brow, my own grandmother, who said I looked comfortable in my chair. They didn't just hurt me, they hurt my mother and they laughed about it. I finally called Cassandra back on Sunday evening, exactly 1 month after I decided to attend that reunion. File the suit against Dustin, I told her, my voice steady. But for the larger case. Prepare the paperwork, but don't file yet. I need a moment. I need to know if any of them are capable of realizing what they did. I need to know if I'm suing 49 conspirators or 49 cowards. The legal hammer was poised, ready to fall, and the next few weeks would determine whose lives it would ultimately crush. The real climax wasn't the sound of the gavel or the transfer of settlement money. It was 3 years later, standing on a podium at a conference, realizing that the people who tried to destroy me had actually armed me with the only weapon that mattered: the truth. The story broke in the local news that weekend: disabled veteran assaulted by brother at family reunion. Doctor recorded everything. The footage, which Dr. Kim had strategically edited to blur everyone's faces except Dustin's and mine, went viral by Monday. Not the full video, just the push, the fall, Dustin's words, and the chanting. It had 3 million views by Wednesday. The public shaming was swift and absolute. Dustin's employer, a construction company, fired him within a week, citing liability concerns. His life imploded within the space of the 1-month deadline I had given myself. He lost his apartment. His friends vanished. My mother, Carol, called me 3 weeks after the reunion. "He's living in his car, Ethan," she said, her voice hollow. "He can't find work. He's your brother. Can't you talk to the prosecutor? Tell them it was a mistake?" "It wasn't a mistake, Mom," I told her, my own voice quiet but steady. "He assaulted me in front of 50 people while I was already disabled. That's a choice. And no, I'm not going to ruin his life. I'm going to let him experience the consequences for his actions. There's a difference." She hung up without saying goodbye. The civil suit settled 4 months later. Dustin pleaded guilty to aggravated battery, receiving 2 years of probation, community service, and mandatory anger management. The civil settlement, covering all my past and future medical bills, the cost of the damaged equipment, and punitive damages, totaled $127,000. Dustin would be paying it off for the rest of his life. "You won," Cassandra Reyes told me the day the settlement finalized. "It doesn't feel like winning," I replied. "It never does," she conceded. "But you sent a message. Disabled people matter, assault has consequences, and you can't just push someone out of a wheelchair because their suffering is inconvenient." 6 months after the reunion, I saw Dustin at the outpatient clinic where I went for physical therapy. He was there for court-ordered community service, volunteering in the rehab wing. He looked thinner, older, and defeated. He saw me, started to stand, then slowly sat back down. I wheeled myself over. He admitted he was working with patients like me, people with spinal injuries and chronic pain. He was seeing the reality of my life reflected in dozens of other faces. He looked at me, his eyes finally meeting mine. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm so fucking sorry. I didn't understand. I didn't try to understand. I just decided you were lying because it was easier than accepting you were really hurt." "I know," I said. "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" he asked, his voice cracking. I thought about the family reunion, the chanting, the x-rays, and the $127,000. I thought about the sheer, unforgivable cruelty of that day. I forgive you for not understanding, for not asking questions, and for believing I was lying without proof, I said finally, 3 years after the reunion. I don't forgive you for pushing me out of that wheelchair, for humiliating me in front of our family, and for choosing cruelty when you could have chosen compassion. I'm not sure I'll ever forgive you for that. Dustin nodded slowly. That's fair too. But, I continued, I see you trying. I see you working. You're not the same person who pushed me. I'm not the same person who got pushed. We're both different now. Maybe different is enough. The real change in the story happened a year later. I accepted an invitation to speak at a disability rights conference. The organizers wanted to hear about my experience, about families who don't believe and the importance of documentation. I stood on the podium, my walking sticks leaning against the side, and I told them everything. The fall, the surgery, the family reunion, Dustin's cruelty, and Alistair's video evidence. When I finished, the applause was deafening. A woman in a wheelchair, who had multiple sclerosis, approached me afterward. My family thinks I'm faking, she told me, tears in her eyes. They say I need to try harder. Show them your documentation, I advised her. Make them look, and if they still don't believe you, then you document it and you protect yourself. Because your pain matters, and anyone who can't accept that doesn't deserve access to you. 3 years after the reunion, my mother called, suggesting a small Thanksgiving gathering with immediate family. Will anyone apologize? I asked her. Silence. They feel terrible, Ethan. Feeling terrible isn't the same as apologizing, I replied firmly. They destroyed me in front of 50 people. Every single person who participated in that owes me an apology for specific things. I'm sorry I chanted, I'm sorry I laughed, I'm sorry I called you a liar. That's the minimum to ask. If they can't own that, they haven't changed. Only 3 people out of 50 ever apologized specifically. A distant aunt, a young cousin, and finally Dustin. He showed up at my apartment, not asking for forgiveness, but showing me a folder full of letters from patients he'd helped at the rehab center. He was no longer the villain in my story. He was a deeply flawed man trying desperately to become someone worthy of a second chance. I still didn't attend that Thanksgiving. The money provided financial relief, but the deeper fracture remained. I realized the ultimate price of their ignorance was not the $127,000, but the permanent loss of the collective family unit. I found my new purpose in advocacy, using my wheelchair not as a sign of weakness, but as a megaphone. I had lost my family, but I had gained my voice, and perhaps that voice, armed with the evidence of their betrayal, was the most powerful weapon I could have ever inherited.